Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Get Your Brush On. This is going to be another one of those two-parter things, as I think she's painting something that's supposed to have some kind of rider. Shoot fly! Shoot fly! Don't bother me! Fish a stick. Enjoy it. Alright, so we're going to be painting rot flies today. And as you can see, there's some limbs on this one. Personally, if this was my personal rot fly, I don't think I would have attached this arm here or the wing. These arms right here on the sides, these little ones, they're fine because they don't get in the way. The head being attached and like this thing right here being attached is fine too. They don't get in the way. But the long arms here, I wasn't able to. These didn't come off. So I have to just work around these. I did, however, take it off of the plastic base, and all I did was I stuck it on a paintbrush to prime it, and I'm going to paint it this way. That way, when it gets put back on its base, that little clear plastic piece is going to stay nice and pristine. So it looks real nice and good. Alright, so for the base coat, as you can see, I primed it black. This is another one of those that if you wanted to, you don't have to prime it black, because I'm going to be base coating it completely with Zandri dust. Now when I say completely, I actually don't mean the top whole shell thing up here. I just mean, like, you know, right here up to this part. Well, up to this part, but not this part. Not the wing, but all the leg, this leg, the snout, and not the stinger. So I'm just going to completely base this in Zandri dust to begin with. Alright, now that I've got the Zandri dust finished up in a nice smooth coat all over where I need it to be, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to apply some Ushabti bone and still using a relatively good sized brush. Just going to do kind of like a thick dry brush on it. Like, I'm not trying to cover up all the Zandri dust, I'm just giving some lightness to the overall thing. See? I'm going to leave, like, the deep areas are still going to be Zandri dust, but just going to do a coat of the Ushabti bone. Alright, now that the Ushabti bone has been applied and is dried, we're going to wash this with some Seraphim Sepia. Now, unlike most of the other ways that I do things, this time you have to be very careful about how you apply the wash. It needs to be even, and there cannot be any real visible brush strokes in this. So, I mean, use a good big brush and even it out as you go. Because the way that the skin gets finished off is after this wash is only one more wash. So it's very important that this one be even and not brushy. Okay? Alright, now that the Seraphim Sepia has dried, I'm actually going to switch gears here, and I'm going to work on the wing a little bit. And for this, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because I'm going to use Ogryn Camo for my base shade, but it's a layer paint, so it's not going to be as thick as your normal base. So what ends up happening is I have to go over it a couple of times. So if you didn't want to go over it a couple of times, I mean, you could easily prime the wings white if you wanted to, or some other kind of lighter color, and not have to deal with doing separate layers for this. Because I'm sure if it was white, it probably wouldn't stick out as bad. But as you can see, I did a light coat on these. You can still see the black through them. So I'm going to let them dry a little bit and then do another coat. Alright, now while the Ogryn Camo is drying on the wing, I've gotten, it's probably 2 coats right there. It goes 2 to 3 depending on how thick a layer you do. You don't want to do it too thick because there's a lot of nice pitting in the wings that you want the wash to sit in. So you don't want to just gum up the wing by doing like really thick coat. Just do a couple of thin coats and it'll work. But while I'm letting that dry, I'm going to pull out my Elysian green. And similar to how I did the plague toads, I'm going to go through and hit all my pustules with it. Now the best way to hit all these pustules is to just pick an area, do all of them on this side of the body, flip it over, do the rest of them on the other side of the body, then do your head and each arm individually. That way you don't miss one, because you want to get them all. Alright, now that I've gotten the Elysian green all over the pustules, I'm going to let those dry, because at this point my wing is dry. And I'm going to use some Underhive ash on it, and I'm just going to dry brush some of the Underhive ash onto the wing. Get it to where it's not shining so bad. There. Grab some more of my brush here. Trying to show you the difference. See? There's still some Elysian green showing through, but in general it just made the wing a lot lighter colored. Alright. Next step is I'm going to do the hard carapace up here. And the color that I'm going to use for that is Castellan green. In addition to the carapace, the wing has this exoskeleton up top that I'm also going to be putting the Castellan green on. And if you look real close, like right here, there's another little edge that's going to get the Castellan green as well. And the stinger as well. And I'm going to keep using as well a lot, because, I don't know, it's late and that's the only word that's coming up to my mind at the moment. And I'm just going to coat the whole carapace up here in the Castellan. Alright, now that we've got the Castellan green all on the top carapace and that little bit on the wing and the stinger, the next step that we're going to do is we're going to take some Loren forest and we're just going to kind of go over it just a little bit like this. You can still see there's plenty of Castellan still showing there. We're just kind of going over it to lighten a couple of areas, but not going, you know, overboard with it. Alright, now that we've got the Loren forest applied to the top carapace, the stinger, and that little bit on the wing there, we're going to do some pinpoint highlighting now. And the first color we're going to use for that is the Straken green. And now the pinpoint highlighting, all we're going to do with this is we're going to trace along the ridges that are popped out with it. And we're going to trace each of those cracks. Oh, it's kind of hard to see because that arm's in the way. Let me do one that might be a little bit easier to see. Right here. And we want to do around the holes that the wings are in. Around that edge there. Sometimes you can even just make up some lines there as well. It's a little difficult to see right now sometimes with some of this, but just like that, see? On the wing as well. And on the wing, what we want to do is just kind of arrow it up here on these notches on the raised part here and pull down a couple of lines, because there are some sculpting lines in there and you want to pull each one of those kind of out with our Straken. Okay? Alright, now that we're done with the pinpoint highlighting with the Straken green, as you can see, we've got just got a little bit on the stinger here too, just right there. Now that I've got most of that stinger done, see these drips? We can actually do those now without fear of getting in the way. So I'm going to pull out my Elysian green again, because they're going to be very similar to how the pustules look, because they're kind of pussy and green and all that good loveliness there. So just take it out and do the dips. Alright, now that we've got those drips done, we're going to let those dry and go back to finishing up pinpoint highlighting on the top. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to pull out the Nurgling green, and kind of go over just a little bit where we've already done the highlight. Now we're going to leave the Straken green there. We're just going to kind of go up next to it to pull off the highlighting that we want. Just like that. and just go over all the lines you've already done, just like right next to them. Alright, now that we've got the Nurgling green on there as our last highlight. See how nice and bright all the highlights are now? How all that carapace kind of sticks out here. Well, that's how it's supposed to look right this second. So we're going to let that dry. And while we're letting that dry, we're going to pull out Ogryn Camo. And we're going to put whiteheads on all of these pustules with it. Get this open real fast. And all that entails is just doing that. Putting a little dot on each of them. We're also going to put just a little bit on these 3 drips here to kind of give a little bit of dimension to them. Alright. Okay. So now that we've got the Ogryn Camo on all our pustules and the slime drops that are at the bottom, the next step is we're going to wash the whole mini. So basically, you end up kind of dunking the whole thing, but not really. With some Athonian Camoshade. And with this particular one, we want to be very even and deliberate in how we apply it. Because this is the last step in this skin here. So you want it to be very even all the way around. You don't want any brush strokes on it. Okay? Alright, now that the Camoshade has completely dried, as you can see, it's dried very evenly. I don't have any brush strokes. It doesn't look messy. And it's gotten very dark in certain areas where it pooled. But I think it still looks really good, just the way it is. What we're going to do now is, as you can see in here, there are faces. Now in the lore, these rot flies come into being from, I think, Beast of Nurgle. They eat people that didn't play with them when they were Beast of Nurgle. So these are all souls that are trapped within this rot fly. They're not actual, still living people. And because they're souls, I'm not going to paint them to look like people. I'm going to paint them to look like souls. And the color that I've chosen for that is Calgar blue. Get some of that on my brush. I'm not going to get too much on my brush because I don't want to just get rid of all that nice detail that's in there. And basically just go over everything that's in these holes here. All the faces and everything. And check both sides because both sides have these souls trapped in there. Okay. Now as you can see, I've gotten the Calgary blue in there, covered the faces. I've also chosen a couple of choice like little holes to have like the soul energy still kind of shining through. And I've done that to both sides. Now the next thing we're going to do is do a pinpoint highlight on the souls. And Fenrisian gray works really good for this. It's kind of like that blue-gray, so it ends up looking rather nice. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush here And wish I had more paint on it than that. It apparently dried in the minute. Kind of go along the ridges, the bridge of the nose, the open mouth, the teeth, his nose here, cheek. You kind of highlight the areas that make it look like a face. Because we want these to read as faces in here. I'm also going to put just a little bit of points in the holes that I've chosen to have the Calgary blue in as well, because we want a little bit of shine down in there as well. Get just a little bit more on my brush here. Get my hand out of the way, sorry. Kind of just get it in there, see? Just a little bit of shine. Alright, now as you can see, that Fenrisian gray is looking really nice in there with the soles. Now if you wanted to, you can kind of stop there, but I'm not going to stop there with them just yet. I'm going to let it dry, and then we're going to do a wash for that. But while we're letting these guys dry, we're going to go ahead and move on to the eyeballs. And as with most of the demons that I've been doing lately, I'm going to pull out the Wild Rider Red. As if you're going to go with an eyeball theme for demons, you might as well stick with it throughout. And work myself around my iPad. And just completely cover in those eyes. Alright, so I've got the Wild Rider Red on there, and as with all the other eyes that I've been doing lately, I've done the little bitty lines, just a little bit around the eye to kind of do the object source lighting with the Wild Rider Red. Now, the next color we're going to use, of course, is Tau Light Ochre. Now, instead of doing just the single pupil, these are flies, so they get multiple pupils. The little eyes, I like to give 3 pupils like that. The big one, however, I do 4. Let me focus here. See? Alright. So as you can see, I've got the 3 in the little ones and the 4 in the big one. Now don't sweat if you can't get it just right. I mean, you can do, as long as it's more than 1, you're good. I mean, if you want to do 2 in the small one and 3 in the big one, that's fine. Or if you want to do even more, go ahead. But I find that this works. Now, the last thing before the glaze is Flash Blitz Yellow. And we're just going to try and make a giant mistake. Don't worry about that kind of thing, because these are bright enough colors that they will cover. It's okay. So just do your best and kind of dot it. See? Alright, so as you can see, I've got all my yellow on there, and I've cleaned up the eyeball again. And so I'm going to let those eyeballs dry, and we're going to move to the wing, because the wing's not quite done. So I'm going to pull out my Nurgling green here. So, again. And I'm going to do some pinpoint highlighting on this. And all I'm going to do is trace these, I guess, folds, lack of a better term, of the wing. Now, I'm not going over the darkened area, I'm going on top of the darkened area. So I'm kind of bringing out the flaps themselves without taking away the shadow. Alright, so as you can see, I've gone through and I've highlighted the wing flaps on here. Now the last step of this is we're going to take Praxeti white and a relatively good sized brush, wipe most of it off the brush, so that you can kind of build up the white on the edge of the wing here and the wing flaps. See? It's still got that nice green tone in the wing, but it gives it a kind of an iridescent feel to it. It makes it feel more like a fly wing than just a green opaque wing. And it's important to wipe most of the Praxeti white off of your brush because it's better to build this kind of thing up to the level where you want it. Because if you put too much on, you've put too much on and you can't go back. Alright, so the wing is now done. As you can see, it's got that nice kind of frosted insect looking wing feel to it now. So we've given enough time to the soles to dry. So now that they're dry, I'm going to take out my Drakenhof Nightshade. And use some of it to get down there into those shadows and make some of those shadows back that kind of got covered with the blues that I was using. I'm also going to kind of work the Drakenhof into the extra holes that I filled with the blue as well. Alright, so while the Drakenhof Nightshade is drying, I'm going to pull out another, I'm going to pull out a glaze this time. The Waywatcher green glaze. And I'm actually going to put this on the snout of this thing. And the reason for this is that it gives the snout just a little bit of a different tone. And I kind of like it. It's a little bit different. It's a little greener. You know, it's just a kind of a personal choice. You don't have to do this step. I mean, honestly, you can omit most of the steps I do. Who cares? It's your model. But this is definitely just a preference thing. But if you want to do this step with me, I just come down to this first big kind of junction and start it and go all the way down. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is we're going to finish off the eyeball, put the glaze on the eyeballs. And that is Bloodletter. And we just apply that right on the eyeballs, just like that. Alright, so while the eyes are drying, we're going to do the last step to the armored carapace up here, and that's to wash it with some Nuln oil. Now the reason for doing this is I want that top part to be just a little darker, because the rider that I'm going to end up putting on this rot fly is going to be a very similar green to this carapace. So just putting a little Nuln oil up here makes the rot fly carapace darker than the skin of the rider. So, of course, if you paint your rider different from the way that I'm going to show you how I paint mine, you can skip this step. In addition to doing it there, pull it up and do some Nuln oil on the stinger and on this section, this top section of the wing here. You gotta be very careful and control your Nuln oil so you don't get any of that black on the wing, because you will mess it up if you get it up on there, because it's just so dark. Alright, so I probably shouldn't have said you'll mess it up. Go into this with a very positive attitude. You can do it, just take your time and use a detail brush. But if you accidentally do get some of the Nuln oil onto the wing, dry the brush off real quick and use the brush to suck up the excess Nuln oil. So it'll mitigate the boo-boo. Okay? So we're just going to let this all dry. Alright, now that all of that is dry, it looks nice, it's good and dark, it's time to go back in on the eyes. And all we're going to do for that is we're just going to take the Flash Glitz Yellow again and just touch lightly where those pupils are. Kind of just bring it out again. Alright, so now that the pupils are brought back out, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make all those pustules all nice and shiny and yucky looking. And the way that we're going to do that is with a technical paint called Nurgles Rot. And all that's necessary for this to do is you shake it up real good, because it does have a tendency to separate and turn white. Just shake it up, get some on your brush, and paint your little pustules with it. And what this will do is it'll give it a little bit more of a green tint to each of these little pustules, but it'll also make them very shiny and yucky looking. Alright, so now that we've got the Nurgles Rot on all of those nice pustules, they're all good and shiny and gross looking, we're going to go back in on the soles. With the Calgar blue. Now you may be wondering, okay, You have me wash it, why are you going back in with the same colors again? Well, this time we're just going to use the Calgar blue as a pinpoint highlight. We're not going to work it into like the crevices or anything like that. This way it's got a nice kind of blue shadowing inside. And now we're just going to pull the faces out with the Calgar. Alright, now for the Calgar, I went back in with the Fenrisian gray and just did tiny bit on the brow ridge and the nose and the mouth here. So now those souls, they pop out and they read as faces. So that's it as far as the fly goes. The last step is basically just to attach the rest of the limbs and you're golden. So the next part is going to be how to paint the rider. But I think I'm going to do that in a separate video. And there you have it. All the wings are done. The legs are attached. We have a very nice rock fly ready for its plague bearer. I'm going to do the rider separately because it is a plague bearer, so you can use the same paint scheme that I'm going to use for it for your own plague bearers. Leave your comments below. If there's any models that you want to see me paint, let me know. I'll see what I can do. And if you want me to do any commission work for you, I'll have that email below as usual. I hope you enjoyed the video.